The autumn of 1887 laid a golden blanket over Cedar Ridge, a small Colorado town sitting at the edge of the Rocky Mountains. It was the kind of place where the wilderness pressed close, where mountains stood like giant walls and the wind carried secrets. Folks there believed they understood everything worth knowing, but they had never met anyone like Eliza Frost. Jacob McKenna lived a few miles outside town on a small ranch he had built with his own hands. At 28 years old, he was the quiet kind, a man who spoke only when it mattered. People in Cedar Ridge said he preferred cattle over people, silence over talk. They called him strange, but Jacob didn't care. He had come to the frontier for peace, not opinions. One crisp October morning, his peace shifted forever. A young bull had broken through his fence and run toward the high country, so Jacob saddled his horse and followed the tracks into the mountains. The air grew sharp, the aspens shivered in bright gold, and the world felt different the higher he climbed. That was when he smelled smoke, thin and out of place in a place this wild. He followed it into a hidden clearing surrounded by tall pines, and there she was, a woman moved by a small fire with the smooth grace of a mountain cat. She wore soft buckskin clothes, her long dark hair loose down her back, her hands steady as she cleaned a rifle. When she lifted her head, her gray eyes met Jacob's like she had been waiting for him. "You're on my mountain," she said calmly. Jacob had never been thrown off balance by anyone, but she struck him silent for a moment. "Didn't know the mountain belonged to anyone," he finally answered. "The mountain belongs to itself," she said. "But I belong to the mountain. I'm Eliza Frost." Her name fit her perfectly. Wild, sharp, and beautiful in a way no town lady could ever be. Jacob introduced himself, explained about the runaway bull. Eliza nodded. "He went down toward Beaver Creek. He'll be safe if the wolves don't find him first." Her voice held no fear, only fact. She lived here, he realized, truly lived here. The idea of surviving alone in these mountains made most folks tremble, but she carried herself like someone who belonged to the land. He found his bull exactly where she said it would be, and he found himself thinking about Eliza all the way home. The next week he rode back, telling himself he was checking the fence line, but the truth lived heavy in his chest. He wanted to see her again. He found her skinning a deer with movements quick and sure. She didn't look surprised to see him. "Lost another bull, Jacob?" she teased gently. "Thought you might need help carrying that deer," he said. She laughed, a sound bright as creek water. "I've been handling game since before I had all my grown teeth, but you can help carry it if you're set on being useful." That afternoon stretched slow and warm. She showed him her world. A cabin built with clever hands, a spring that never froze, food supplies hidden in ways only a mountain person would know. Everything about her life was raw and honest. "Why live up here alone?" Jacob finally asked. Alone is a town word. Up here I live with the mountains, the seasons, the creatures. Down there they'd try to tame me, make me small. I won't live small. He understood her more than he should have. In her eyes he saw freedom, real and sharp. Something he never knew he missed until she stood in front of him. Days passed, then weeks. Each time he rode up the mountain, he found another reason to stay longer. She taught him about weather signs and herbs. He helped her reinforce the cabin for winter. They grew close without trying, as natural as snow, falling on a quiet night. The first snowfall dusted the peaks when he asked her to marry him. "I'm not a town woman," she warned. "They'll mock you for taking a mountain woman." "Let them mock," Jacob said. "I choose you." Her yes came soft as the snow around them. A traveling preacher married them a week later. Her wedding dress was buckskin. Her vows were simple. Her hands trembled only once, when she placed them in his. But the moment they rode into Cedar Ridge, the curtain watching began. The whispers followed within hours. Women gasped at her clothes. Men smirked at Jacob. Children stared like she was some wild creature escaped from a story. They spoke the words he had expected but hated hearing. They mocked him for taking a mountain woman. The words spread through town like a fever. Snow settled early over Cedar Ridge. covering the rooftops and muddy streets, but it did nothing to soften the sharp looks thrown at Eliza when she walked beside Jacob. She wore the simple calico dress he had encouraged her to try, but no fabric on earth could hide the way she moved. She walked with the confidence of someone shaped by mountains, not parlors. The first Saturday after their wedding, Jacob needed supplies. He hoped people would behave, but when they stepped into Morrison's general store, the room went silent. Conversations died. Eyes turned sharp. Mrs. Morrison lifted her chin the way a woman does when she wants someone to feel unwelcome. Eliza stood with calm dignity while the women stared like she was something dangerous. Mrs. Hartley spoke first. "My goodness," she said, her smile thin. "Wherever did you learn to dress like that?" "I made it myself," Eliza answered. "From a deer I hunted." Shock rippled through the room. Jacob saw the judgment in their eyes, but Eliza kept her back straight, her hands steady, her voice steady as Riverstone. Outside the store, the whispers exploded. Inside the saloon, the jokes grew louder. Jacob went one evening to hire extra hands for winter. He had hoped to avoid trouble, but Tom Brennan was deep in his whiskey and itching to provoke. "McKenna," Brennan called out. "Heard you caught yourself a wild one," she housebroke yet. Laughter rolled through the smoky room. Jacob ignored him at first, focusing on his conversation with Sam Watkins. But the taunts grew worse. "Bet she sleeps outside," Dale Collalton added. "More animal than woman." "Heard she eats her meat raw," another voice yelled. Jacob's jaw tightened. But when Brennan leaned close and said, "Tell us, McKenna, does she howl at the moon?" The punch came before Jacob even knew he'd thrown it. Chairs scraped, men shouted, and the saloon erupted. When Jacob was shoved outside, Eliza stood waiting in the cold, her eyes unreadable. The next days grew harder. Children followed Eliza through town singing cruel rhymes. Women came to the ranch pretending kindness, hiding sharp comments and sweet voices. The men grew bold in their disrespect. Everywhere they went, the same words chased them. They mocked him for taking a mountain woman. Jacob had never hated anything as much as he hated those words, but Eliza bore it in silence. She did not fight children or bicker with women. She worked harder than ever on their ranch, building shelters, storing food, teaching Jacob things that made their winters easier. Then one evening Jacob returned from moving cattle and found her gone. Panic clawed at him until he saw her tracks leading into the hills. He found her standing on a rocky ledge that overlooked the whole valley. "I dream about the mountain," she admitted quietly. "Not because I want to leave you, but because up there the silence is full, not empty." Jacob wrapped his arms around her. "We'll face them together. I won't lose you to their cruelty." She rested her head against him. "Then you must learn what the mountain taught me." From that day, she began teaching him skills he'd never imagined needing. How to move without sound, how to read danger in a man's posture, how to shoot from cover, how to survive if trouble came in the night. "Why do you know all this?" he asked. Her expression changed. "Because men have tried to hurt me before, and I had to survive." The winter hardened everything. Snow rose high. Jacob's leg broke in a horse fall, and Eliza carried him home through a blizzard with strength that came from pure love and fear. He burned with fever for days, and she never left his side. She fed him, healed him with mountain medicine, and kept him alive. When he recovered, she continued her quiet work for the town. She left food on doorsteps, medicines wrapped in cloth, instructions for treating frostbite. For weeks she saved lives without anyone knowing it was her. And then people began to find out. Dr. Holbrook arrived one morning. "Your herbal remedies are saving more people than my medicines," he said. "Teach me." For the first time, someone looked at Eliza with respect instead of fear. The walls around Cedar Ridge began to crack. Families who had once whispered about her now relied on her. Children she had saved from frostbite began bringing her small gifts, but some hearts refused to change. Tom Brennan and Dale Collalton grew more bitter. They whispered new lies. They claimed Eliza had caused the harsh winter with mountain magic. They followed her with hateful eyes, their anger sharper now that others had softened. Then the fire came. On a warm March evening, The Henderson barn caught fire in a blaze hotter than any in memory. Sparks jumped building to building on the wind. The whole town was in danger. Jacob joined the bucket line, but it was Eliza who took charge with the certainty of someone who had battled wildfires before. Her voice rose above the panic. "Stop wasting water. Wet the roofs downwind. Move the children out of the path." People listened. Then a scream cut through the chaos. The Morrison children were trapped upstairs in a burning house. Jacob turned toward the flames. But Eliza was already running. She wrapped herself in a wet blanket, burst inside, and moments later reappeared at an upstairs window with two terrified boys pressed against her sides. She lowered them down with torn sheet, but the floor was breaking beneath her. "Jump!" people shouted. Eliza leapt for the next roof, her hands burning when she grabbed the edge, but strong men caught her as she fell. The fire burned half the town, but the rest survived because of her. As dawn broke, as people sat exhausted on smoky ground, old Henderson spoke first. "We mocked her," he said, "called her wild. But her wildness saved us." One by one, townspeople approached her, not with fear, with gratitude. And for the first time since leaving her mountain, Eliza's eyes softened with a hint of belonging. But not everyone was grateful. Some hearts stayed dark. Some minds stayed twisted. And the danger waiting in those shadows was closer than anyone knew. Spring should have brought peace to Cedar Ridge, but trouble came riding instead. It began with the sound of horses after midnight. Not one nor two, many. Jacob woke first, but Eliza was already sitting upright, her body tense and her eyes sharp. "7 riders," she whispered. "Maybe more. They're trying to be quiet." Before Jacob could reach for his rifle, the front door slammed open. Tom Brennan stood in the doorway with Dale Colleton and 5 other men behind him. Their faces were twisted with anger and fear, their voices thick with whiskey. "Evening, McKenna," Brennan growled. "We came to save you from the witch who's bewitched your mind." "You broke into my home," Jacob snapped. "Your home stopped being yours when you brought her into it," Dale spat. "She started that fire. She brought raiders before. She's cursed this whole town." Jacob lunged forward, but 2 men grabbed him, pinning him to the ground. A boot slammed into his ribs. "Stop!" Eliza stepped from the shadows, tall and calm despite the rifles pointed at her. "You want me. Leave him out of this." Her voice made the men hesitate, but Brennan shoved Jacob's head into the dirt. "Take her to the barn," Brennan ordered. "We'll teach her what happens to witches." "No!" Jacob twisted against the men holding him, desperate to reach her. But he was dragged outside while Eliza was forced toward the barn, her hair pulled, her arms pinned. Inside the barn, they shoved her against a wall. Blood streaked her cheek, but her eyes burned like coals. "This is your last chance, McKenna," Brennan said, pressing a gun to Jacob's head. "Denounce her. Say she bewitched you, and we let you live." "Go to hell," Jacob choked out. Brennan's fist smashed into his jaw. They brought out rope. But before they could touch her, Eliza lifted her head and began to sing. It wasn't a song of fear or pleading. It was a low, wild melody that rose like wind through pines. It made the hair on every man's arm stand on end. "Shut her up!" Dale shouted, stepping back. "She's calling something." Then they heard it. A howl. Another. Then many. Yellow eyes appeared outside the barn, glowing in the moonlight. Shapes moved in the shadows. Not wolves, but Eliza's mountain dogs. Half-wild creatures she had raised from pups. The men froze. "She's a witch," Brennan cried. "She summoned the beasts. They respond to my call because I trained them," Eliza said, her voice cold and strong. "Fear makes you blind." The dogs lunged through the open doorway, snarling. Men stumbled back in terror. In the chaos, Eliza moved like lightning. She grabbed a pitchfork, keeping the men back as her dogs surrounded her. Jacob saw a fallen gun, rolled, and grabbed it. "Enough!" he shouted, firing into the barn roof. Dust rained down. The dogs stilled. The men stopped. "You came into my home," Jacob said, breathing hard. "You tried to kill my wife. You threatened my life. The only reason any of you are still standing is because she doesn't want your deaths on her conscience." Eliza stepped beside him, her face streaked with blood and fury. "I'm no witch," she said. "I'm only what the mountain made me. You see danger because you fear what you don't understand." Brennan and his men backed away, stumbling over each other to escape the barn. They mounted their horses and rode into the night, fear chasing them harder than any dog could. When silence finally settled, Eliza's legs shook. Jacob caught her before she fell. "You magnificent woman," he whispered. "I thought I lost you." "You'll never lose me," she breathed, pressing her forehead to his, "unless you choose to let me go." He held her close until dawn. But danger wasn't done with Cedar Ridge. 1 month later, riders appeared on the horizon, more than 20 of them, raiders, hungry for money, guns, and whatever else they could take. The sheriff was gone, the town unprepared. Jacob and Eliza rode hard into town. "Raiders coming!" Jacob shouted. "They'll be here within the hour. You expect us to trust you?" Dale asked, trembling. "After everything, you trust me or you die," Eliza said plainly. "Choose." Margaret Hartley grabbed her mother's hand.
"We trust her."
That was enough. Eliza took command. "Women and children to Elk Canyon. Men with guns. With me. We'll break them before they reach Main Street." She positioned defenders in hidden places, taught them quick tactics, showed them where to shoot and when to move. When the raiders arrived, they walked straight into her trap. Gunshots echoed from high rocks. Raiders spun, confused. More shots from the trees. Then from rooftops. They were surrounded by shadows they couldn't hit back. And Eliza? She moved through the fight like the very spirit of the mountains. She dragged a wounded townsman to safety. Her dogs ran at her side, breaking the raiders' line. Her rifle cracked again and again. When the gang leader rode forward, Jacob fired from the church roof. The man fell from his horse. Panic swept the raiders. They fled in all directions. But Cedar Ridge had won. Because of her. After the smoke cleared, after bodies were carried away and wounds dressed, old Henderson stepped forward. "She saved us," he said, his voice breaking. "She saved us all." Others echoed him. Even Dale bowed his head. Tom Brennan stood last. His eyes were red, his voice shaking. "I was wrong," he whispered. "Wrong about everything. She saved my boy. She saved my family. She saved this town." Eliza said nothing at first. She simply looked at each person who had once called her savage. Then she spoke softly. Now you understand. Wild doesn't mean dangerous. Wild means alive." That moment changed Cedar Ridge forever. Her wild touch did shame the whole town, but not in the way they once meant. It shamed them into becoming better people. From that day on, Eliza Frost wasn't the mountain woman they mocked. She was the woman who saved Cedar Ridge, the woman its people trusted, the woman they finally learned to respect. And she and Jacob walked home hand in hand, knowing they had weathered every storm together, mountain storms, town cruelty, and the violence of men. Love had survived it all, and now at last they belonged together.